you might hear better, or of course, I have a mic, so it might just be just fine. But thank you, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just a little side note for you guys. I did this last year, and I don't know if any of you were here last year. You were here last year. There was 4 of us up here on a panel, and I only had to talk for 15 minutes, and that was all there was. And then when they asked me this year, I thought, well, this would be about the same thing. I could do that, that's no problem. No, I had to present to 2 classes and you guys tonight. So I had 3 opportunities. Hopefully, I put together 3 different presentations. There's a little bit of overlap, but if you guys have been at one of the other 2, it should be, the majority of it should be new. What I'm really doing tonight is just going through a little bit of the history of how ICM came to be and the ethanol industry. Now I do have, if any of you are involved in entrepreneurship or whatever, I do have a copy of the presentation I did this afternoon, and I do not have one of what I did this morning. It probably wasn't that good anyway because I had no questions. So anyway, having said that, that's kind of what we're going to go through here. And just to tell you, I was born and raised on a farm in northwest Iowa. I was one of 6 kids. My sister is the oldest, and there were 5 boys. So growing up on that farm, my dad had an 8th grade education, and that is as far as he could go because that was during the Depression, and he had to work. When he graduated from 8th grade, he went to work for a neighbor who paid him $50 a month. He got to keep $5, $45 went to his parents, my grandpa and grandma, to make ends meet. That was in Corsica, South Dakota. This was during the Dust Bowl days. This was during, there was locusts, grasshoppers, something like that. You could call it either one, who literally ate the clothes off the clothesline. That's how much they ate up everything in the community as they went through, and people had, again, nothing left. So anyway, my dad went to the Army. He served in the Second World War. After the war, he went on a farm in northwest Iowa, and he always believed that he could have been something more than he was. He was never excited about farming. However, in my observation of him, he was a very charitable man, did a lot for neighbors, for his church, for his family, and I had the opportunity to work alongside of him while I was in high school, and I always felt that this was a good deal. A day out of school was always good for me, helping a neighbor, doing whatever I could do. And so I took my first job at the age of 12, working for a guy who sold seed corn. Now this is going to date me. It won't date any of you guys because you have no idea what I'm talking about. But back then, seed corn was small rounds, large rounds, small flats, large flats. You put the certain planter plate in the planter, and you matched it up with the seed in the bag, and that's how you planted your field. Today it's all done with air planters. It's all done with seed plateless planters, and much more precision than it was back then. But at that point in time, we had to match up the seed and the plates for the farmer, and that was my job. Out of high school, I went to work for a dehy company. Dehydration, we cut alfalfa and dried it and made pellets out of it up in northwest Iowa. That was my first full-time job out of school, and I thought you know, I can be successful, all I have to do is just work harder. And so I did. I just outperformed everybody else who was there, but really did not have any respect for other people's time, other people's talents, other people's skills. I had to learn, quote unquote, learn entrepreneurship or learn leadership the hard way. I had to just learn it by doing it. And at the age of 20, I was already married. At the age of 21, I already had my first child, and quit my job at the same week. And went to work for a welding shop where I did custom welding and repair of farm equipment. And I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed doing that, and I was kind of good at it. I kind of could look at this piece of equipment, let's say it's a disc, planter, cultivator, whatever back then, and I could kind of figure out, was it just too lightly built and it just needed to be a little bit rebuilt? Did the farmer abuse it? Was it suffering from old age? And you know, that kind of said how you were going to fix that piece of equipment. If it was old age, you may have to replace a part of it. If it was just abused, just weld it back together. If it wasn't heavy enough in the first place, you just figured out how to beef it up. And that was kind of fun. While I was doing that, I was approached by a farmer that I used to work for in high school. And he says, you know, he says they're building all of these cattle confinements, these hog confinements and stuff like that in the area. Somebody's got to clean those things out. We need to do that. I didn't know at the time what we meant. We was me. And so bought a truck, bought a tank, put it on there, and I was in the shit business. Okay? So I was cleaning out these confinements and city lagoons and you name it, and I was selling it to the farmers as fertilizer. It was a great business. I did extremely well, and so that was my next, and that was my first foray into business, doing something that nobody else wants to do. Usually works pretty good. I remember at that time, I took a course from Dale Carnegie. If you guys, any of you know Dale Carnegie's, they have sales courses, they've got management courses and stuff like that. So I went to this Dale Carnegie sales course. I thought I'd learn some things that would help me, and I did. And so we're in a circle in this big room, and the instructor, teacher, moderator was there, and we were going around the room and say, what do you do? And then they were trying to do, this was the whole name recognition thing, and I have never gotten good at name recognition. I still don't know people's names like I should, and I'm just terrible at that. But anyway, so they were going around the room, what do you do? Well, most of them were working for Channel 9, Channel 4 News. One of them sold Horner Waldorf boxes. I only remember that because he's the guy I competed with at the finals. Another one was Campbell Soup salesman. Another one was stocking shelves at a grocery store. So there was all kinds of different skills in there. Well, they came around to me and they said, all right, who are you? I'm Dave VanderGriend. What do you do? I sell shit. Yeah, it was silence. Nobody said, they couldn't quite figure out, you know, were we supposed to laugh? Are we supposed to be annoyed? I don't know. And I found the moderator says, well, you're going to have to elaborate on that a little bit. So I did. I explained to him how cattle confinements, hog confinements, sold it as fertilizer, and then I did get a little chuckle out of everybody. But candidly, I went through that sales course, And I think, I don't think I was really all that good at it, but they always wanted to know what I was gonna say about my product this week. So I ended up in the finals against the Horner Waldorf box guy, and I won the championship for the class in sales. Now, that and a cup of coffee and $1 will get you a cup of coffee, but candidly, that was my first introduction into what does it mean to be a salesman in an entrepreneurial type business. And so anyhow, after that, my brother was a student at South Dakota State University, and he was in mechanical engineering, and he was in the class, and a man by the name of Dr. Middow came, and he was director of the microbiology department, came to the engineering class and said, I need a distillation tower so that we can test various products at the microbiology department for ethanol content and things like that. And my brother Dennis raised his hand and said, I can do that. Well, that was a bit of an overstatement from his point of view, because he didn't know how to weld, he didn't know how to build anything or anything, but he was a good engineer. So he went to the library, got a bunch of books, mainly from Second World War Germany, on how to build a distillation column. He took those books home to my house, and we sat down around the kitchen table and started saying, he says, we're going to build a still. I said, well, what's that? We got to read these books. So I did. Read these books, studied that, figured out how to build a small distillation column, and then we put all the pieces together. We hauled them to Brookings, South Dakota State University, and we put this thing up and we tied it to some of the beams. We were in this old, like a barn, chicken house type building where they kept the white rats to use for microbiology to do testing on different drugs, which is kind of immaterial to the story, but it's part of the story. And so anyway, we got this all up and we were getting ready. There was steam in the building, there was electricity in the building. It all looked really good. And then the fire marshal showed up. And the fire marshal said, you're going to do what? You are going to make ethanol in this wooden building with no foundation and floor and rats in the basement? We don't think so. So we tore everything back down again, hauled it back to Sheldon, our hometown, and built a 6-foot by 6-foot skid so that it could be portable and it could set outside. That was the plan. During this time frame, the DOE was formed in 1977 by President Carter, and the director of the DOE at that time was a guy by the name of Bill Holmberg. Now, Bill Holmberg was a Marine, decorated Marine in the Korean War, and Dr. Medow was a tank operator in the Second World War. So guess what? Those two guys got together and they said, we want to demonstrate distillation on the Mall in Washington, D.C. for an energy fair called Act 79, Appropriate Community Technology, 1979. So Dr. Medow comes back to Dennis and says, we need you to haul this thing to DC and run it on the Mall. Now you have to bear in mind, we were building our first still. We had never run a still. We had no idea how they worked. We didn't know anything. So we took this thing, built it, painted it up, painted in Iowa, dried in Illinois, on its way to DC. We set it up in DC. Bill Holmberg found a company with a boiler on a truck, brought it over, and went to a brewery in the hills of Virginia, got some beer, and put it in one tank, stock tank, and then we were going to run it through and then put it in the other stock tank and then do it over again. On the night before we started running, Bill Holmberg called Dennis over and said, "How's this thing gonna work?" And my brother said, "I have no idea, I've never run a still before." And he said, "You what? You've never run a still?" "I've never run a still before." So fortunately, Bill Holmberg had connections. He found this moonshiner from out in the hills of Virginia somewhere, who came down and helped Dennis start it up and run it. So we ran this still, and with a tank, let's just say 250, 300 gallon stock tank, we could run and we could make ethanol, and you could see it bubbling on the plates. We had some windows in there for about 15 minutes. And then you were done, and then you had to pour the alcohol back in the beer in the other tank and run it back through again. As it turned out, every time it was running like it was supposed to run is when the senators and congressmen came through. We ran it for Kennedy, for Dole, for Byrd. These are, you know, this is before you were even born, guys, so that's okay. But we ran it for all those different dignitaries and congressmen and stuff like that. And then when we finished that, we took it to Colby, Kansas. We ran it there. And then from there, we took it to Springfield, Illinois, and ran it there for a number of months. So that was the beginning of the ethanol industry for my brother and I. From that, we started building small farm scale distillation columns, and in 1982, when Reagan got into office, and I will say right now, he did the right thing, but he shut down all the funding from the Department of Energy and the Department of Agriculture, and our little company went broke. And so we didn't get paid by our people we were working for. But bear in mind, there were about 12 large scale, I'm saying 10 to 20 million gallon a year plants built in the US during that time in the early 80s. All but 3 of them failed. And the 3 that didn't fail, candidly, took significant haircuts to the investors and to the banks. So it was a challenging time to start over because nobody knew what they were doing, including us. So that was how we got started. So I was out of business in 1983, and so I spent the next couple of years helping some plants, doing what I could. In 1985, I was contacted by one of those 3 plants, the one in Colwich, Kansas, and would I come and fix it? And I didn't tell them that I didn't know how to fix it either, but I thought, well, I can do that. I didn't have a job anyway. And so I did. I went there, and in the summer of '85, we started the plant up in January of '86, and I stayed there for 10 years. The good thing about that was my education. Some of you guys are in college for 4 years. It took me 10. But I figured out, I learned how the right way was to make ethanol. I also learned some of the wrong ways how to make ethanol, but it was a great experience for me to really learn what it was like to grow a business. So when I left, I then left High Plains and started ICM in 1995. And the purpose for doing that was a long drawn out story, but candidly, I left there because I was not comfortable with the integrity of the leadership of that company and felt that I needed to move on. So we formed ICM. I actually bought some property from High Plains, and so I had a place to work. We had 20 employees that helped build a plant in York, Nebraska the year before for High Plains. So I had some guys, and we took off and said, okay, so I've got 20 employees, I've got a building, what do we do now? And so we looked at the ethanol industry and said, what is one of the biggest issues in the ethanol industry today? And it was dryers. They did not have a good product to dry, a good equipment to dry the distiller's grains. And distiller's grains is when you start with a bushel of corn, you've got 65% starch, and you've got 35% everything else. The starch converts 2 pounds of starch makes 2 pounds of sugar. 2 pounds of sugar makes 1 pound of ethanol and 1 pound of CO2. So all that's left is the fiber, the protein, the oil, the germ. All of those items are still there because they weren't starch. And so that leftover product, co-product, we called distiller's grains, needed to be dried, especially in Iowa and areas that didn't have livestock. So we went to work to design and build a dryer. We went in the shop, we made a drum, 12-foot diameter, 4 feet deep, and just started putting different type of lifters and paddles in it and trying to figure out how can we get this stuff to mix and turn and get good heat transfer and all these type of things. And we ended up, we think this will work. We built our first dryer. We now have over 400 of those dryers out in the industry, and we dominate the industry with distiller's grains dryers. There isn't one out there that does it better than we do it. And so that was a good business for us. And so in 2001, we built our first ethanol plant in Russell, Kansas. And that particular plant was a 40 million gallon a year plant. And the contractor that built the design that we put together was the same contractor that did the plant for us in York 6 years earlier. Fagan Incorporated out of Granite Falls, Minnesota. And we finished that plant, we started it up, it worked. And Ron said, I want to build these things. I want to be able to sell these things. Will you license me the technology? Which we did, kind of. What we didn't give to him was the general arrangement layout. We did not give the piping design or the equipment specs. But he could do all the concrete work, he could do all the stuff. And by doing it that way, we were able to build over 100 ethanol plants in less than 10 years. And that was quite an accomplishment. It takes about 18 months to build an ethanol plant. So that business took off and performed extremely well. We had a very good relationship with Fagan, and it worked out good for him, and it worked out good for ICM. And so he built about 75 of the plants. We built about 25 of the plants. So, right now there's approximately 180 fuel ethanol plants in the U.S. ICM has been in over 150 of them. So our technology is required by the bank. The bank says, we'll borrow you money on an ICM plant, but we won't borrow you money on a Vogelbush plant or a Katzen plant or a Delta T plant. So we had very good technology, and that kind of helps. you can sell something that works a lot easier than selling something that doesn't work very well. So we had an advantage there. And Dennis's mantra, and it was alluded to a little bit earlier, his goal was sustainable agriculture. What can we do for sustainable agriculture? How can we make things better for the farmer? As an example, my father never bought a new tractor until 2005. Bought his first brand new tractor. Why? Because he was getting a good price for his corn, his beans. You know, we're in the fuel ethanol industry for corn, but if the value of corn goes up, and which will raise the price of corn, it's going to raise the price of beans right with it. It's going to raise the price of wheat, and all, you know, the rising tide raises all ships. So everybody benefited from the success of the fuel ethanol industry. And before 2001, was actually 1999, the U.S. grew about 9.5 billion bushels of corn. Today we do 16 billion bushels of corn. So what does that mean? About 6 billion bushels goes to the fuel ethanol industry. Nothing else changed. The amount of corn that goes into things like grits, fructose, corn flakes is all the same. The exact same amount of corn is being used for the food industry since 1999. The exact same thing is true for the feed industry. Chickens, hogs, cattle. The amount of corn that goes into those industries is the same as it was in 1999. How about exports? Same thing. The amount of exports in 1999 are equal to the amount of exports we do today. So what really happened here is the farmer saw a profit. He could make a profit. He could grow more corn, and we could use more corn. And globally, it did a whole lot of things. Because the price of corn went up in the United States, the price of corn went up in South America. The price of corn went up in Europe. The price of corn went up in Africa. All of the farmers throughout the world did better because of the fuel ethanol industry here in the United States. And I do have a white paper on that if you guys would ever want one. I'll have them after class. But when you're saying we did an extra 6 billion bushels of corn, when you say we raised the price of corn about $1 on 16 billion bushels of corn is $16 billion to the farmer, which then went to John Deere and went to all of the implement dealers, the fertilizer guys, the seed corn guys. Everybody did better when the farmer does better. So, what did that mean? What did that mean for me? Having what I would say an extremely successful business. I was looking around for things to pay attention to. Back then there was an aviation company called Quest, located in Sandpoint, Idaho. I don't know if any of you guys know them or not, but they built airplanes. Anybody familiar with the Cessna Caravan? Got 2, 3, 4, okay. It's not a small, it's a mid-sized single-engine airplane, very popular for FedEx to haul packages, very popular in the Caribbean to haul people to various islands. And so it's like a 8-passenger, 10-passenger airplane. So Quest Aviation was started by a missionary pilot for MAF, Mission Aviation Fellowship, also out of Idaho. and they were building this airplane specifically designated to work in backwoods, third world countries, unimproved fields, big tires, turbine engine, and something that could be fixed in the field, because the pilot was also the mechanic for the aviation industry. So I got started in the I'll just make it up, 2005 range, supporting this organization, and it wasn't very well run, and they all thought they were missionaries, not businessmen. Now, I'm not here to criticize missionaries, don't get me wrong, but they did not know how to make a profit. And so in 2012, or about 2011, they went broke, and they put it up for sale, $10 million. I bought it, okay? There was a reason I bought this company, not because I was anywhere smart about aviation. I'm a pilot. That doesn't mean I know anything about aviation. I can just fly. So I bought this company, found a really good CEO, and we started rebuilding the company. Why did I do that? Because the mission organizations, MAF, JARS, Samaritan's Purse, Ethos 360, all of them had made down payments for airplanes, totaling $10 million. And what my concern was, if Quest went out of business, those people would have to report all those losses to their donors. And you know, Tabor College depends upon donors. If they squander the donated money, they won't get any more. It's not going to go well for Tabor College. It was the same thing with Quest. So I said, when I can sell the company for enough money that I can pay back these mission organizations, I'm going to sell it. So what I did was, when we bought it, I split the stock 50-50. I kept half with a couple of investors, and half of it went to the mission organizations, which said, okay, if we can get about $30 million for this thing, I can pay those guys off and everybody else off. We sold it for 60. Now, what I didn't know at the time is we had $30 million worth of other debt that we had to take care of too. But at the end of the day, we sold it. The mission organizations got 100% of their money back, plus 5 airplanes and 3 helicopters. So, I mean, I can't say any more about that than a definition of what is a God thing. I wasn't smart enough to do this. Our team wasn't smart enough to do this. But God said, I will honor, I believe, God said, I will honor your effort because you're doing it for the right reason. I was doing it for these guys to get their money back, and we were able to accomplish that. We did that in 5 years. We bought the company for $10 million, sold it for $60 million 5 years later. The Japanese company that bought it was not the sharpest tool in the drawer, but that's okay. It worked. And so another example of a God thing is Orphans Unlimited. Now, Orphans Unlimited is a organization located in Mozambique, and we currently feed about 2,500 orphans and widows. And if we didn't feed them, they'd be dead. So I got acquainted with Brenda Lang, who was the founder of Orphans Unlimited, and she shared her story and stuff with me, and I said, okay, we will be the food guys. as many orphans and widows as you can find, line up, I will buy the food, okay? Candidly, they had 50. They now have 2,500. We have 3 big warehouses. We buy everything local, from the local farmers. We're improving the economy in that area, and it has gone extremely well. In fact, we decided about 4 years ago, it's going so well, let's start Awana. Any of you guys know the Awana program?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Some of you do. Awana it's kind of like Boy Scouts for church. Okay? You play some games, and you get a Bible lesson and a memory verse, and hopefully you pass. But that's kind of the program, and it's very popular in the Wichita area, in the community. And so I thought, hey, we've got all these kids, and they don't have electricity. They don't have cell phones. So obviously, they don't have any of the amenities we do. They don't have running water. Let's start Awana. We'll have a captive audience. This should be great. So we did. First thing I found out is Portuguese in Portugal. It's Brazilian Portuguese in Brazil. It's Mozambique Portuguese in Mozambique. They take enough of the words from the local language and incorporate it into the Portuguese that you cannot use Brazilian Portuguese in Mozambique. You have to translate it to Mozambique Portuguese because the local language there is Makua, and Makua has different words that are embedded within the language. I mean, we know that here. You go to talk to some of the guys on the football team in Miami, they don't speak English either. They have their own language. And so we had to get it translated, we had to do that, but now it's time for the quiz. How many people do you think, how many kids do you think come to Awana every week? Anybody want to venture a guess?
4,000.
You aren't even close. Keep going.
10,000.
Keep going. 15,000. There you go. We have about 15,000 that come every weekend to Awana. You say, well, how does that work? How do you get to 15,000 kids when we don't have any electricity, we don't have any speakers, we can't get it out? Well, it's kind of a unique thing. We go to them. We've got 5 motorcycles, 2 guys on a motorcycle with a gunny sack to carry the different T-shirts for the teams, and we use PVC pipe painted different colors for the Awana games. We weave the rope together and glue it for the circular rope, all the different things, because you don't have any of those things in Mozambique. And so those 5 motorcycles go out every Friday morning, Saturday morning, and Sunday morning to the various villages. And the close villages will use 10 bicycles, and we have other people that go to the close villages. That is how we can reach that many people with the gospel message and in an environment that they don't have anything else. One of the challenges we have is the rebels from Tanzania are coming down into Mozambique, and one of the villages that we supply food to, they lined the kids up and asked them, are you Muslim or are you Christian? If they said Christian, they shot us. Now think about that. If somebody came up to you and put a gun to your head and said, are you a Christian or are you a Muslim? What would you say? that's a question I've never been faced with. And, you know, those kids that said, I'm a Christian, knew that that was the end of it for them. That is a level of courage that those people had that I don't think is as prevalent here in the US. But anyway, be that as it may, that's been what's gone on there. It's been going well. We're having good success with it. We're well appreciated by the local mayor in the town of Balama, where we're at, because we fixed their well, we fixed their hospital, we painted their hospital, we fixed different things. We do things for the city. We put tires on the ambulance. You know, you kind of want to understand where your bread's buttered at. We need the mayor to like us if we're going to stay doing what we're doing, because the mayor is a Muslim. But the mayor knows what we do, and we are reaching out to her. It's a lady. We're reaching out to them with meeting physical needs first, not spiritual, but physical. When you meet the physical needs, even in these villages, when you go into the village, you identify the orphans, you identify the widows, you put them together, you feed the family, okay? It's now a family. Now the widow doesn't have to be a prostitute in order to get food to eat. She's got a job, she's got kids to take care of, the kids have a mom. And I was born and raised on the farm too. I work for food. They work for food. But we supply all the food, so any food that they could grow, they can sell and maybe get a new dress or a new set of t-shirts or whatever they want to do for the kids. So the next thing that happens is the town people come over and say, who are these guys? What are they doing? Why are they doing that? And that gives us the opportunity to start a mango church. Now, a mango church is nothing more than the food director under a mango tree reading the Bible. He doesn't have a pastoral degree. He doesn't have any of this stuff. He's got a Bible and he can read it. And guess what? The Holy Spirit takes it from there. Amen. And it works. And we are reaching a lot of people through that particular method. And it works really quite well. So it isn't, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. You know, God says he calls the, you know, he doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies who he calls. Amen. And if he's calling us to do ministry there, he qualifies those guys to do their job and do what they do and do it well, and it works well. So that's another ministry that we're involved with. I'm involved with a number of schools. We support about 6 schools. Tabor happens to be one of them. And so I'm very involved in education. I believe that education is where we start, not where we end. And so that has been a prime objective of us. We support about 21 missionaries and a number. We support the FAA. They're here. FFA, excuse me. And where's the FAA?
You were right for not the flights, the farmers.
Okay. With programs at high schools and stuff like that, I'm very involved and interested in young people wherever we can. And none of this would be possible without the success of ICM. And ICM gave me the tools that I needed to do what I could do out here to a degree, for the kingdom and for what I was called, I believe, called to do. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just a guy that believes in what we're doing as an industry and believes what part can I play for other people, and we're more of I'm a food play, I'm a equipment play, I'm a people play. I started involved, with the aircraft I mentioned to you, with Orphans Unlimited I mentioned to you. Even though I support a lot of missionary people, my primary focus is being the hands and feet of Jesus, not the mouth. What can we do in these environments to make life better for others? So having said all of that, I'm on time, so I won't get chastised for overshooting my time frame. And I'm supposed to, at this point in time, open it up for any questions you guys may have. Before I do that, I got one other thing to bring up. Have any of you guys went and saw the movie Nefarious? You have? What did you think? Because you're the first one I found that watched it.
I thought during the movie, like, you have to really pay attention because there's just so much dialogue, but it was kind of like a mind-tricking type of movie. I don't know. I thought it was interesting to watch.
In my morning session, I talked about the Second World War, ending up the Second World War, talking about Hitler and what he did to the Jewish population. And my opinion, this is me talking now, Hitler was demon possessed. I think we have people in leadership today in this country that are demon possessed. The Nefarious story, I'll give you a little outline, and I recommend go on YouTube and download it, watch it. I helped sponsor it. Good thing was I got all my money back. But the movie is a guy in prison, and believe it or not, if they're going to execute you, they got to prove that you're sane so that they can execute you. Seems a little odd, a little unique, but a guy came in playing the part of a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist interviews Edward, is the guy's name, to determine whether or not he was sane. And as it turns out, I won't steal any more of the thunder for it, but he was determined to be sane, and so they executed him. But that demon that was in him then went and embedded himself in the psychiatrist. It is I believe in demons. I believe in the evil. I believe Jesus cast out demons, and those demons are still around. I think that we need to pay attention to things that are going on in this country and around the world. There is evil, and when you're dealing with that, the difference from evil versus good, I believe we won the Second World War because it was not a war against the Allies in Germany. It was a war against good and evil. And we won that battle, but Satan's still around, and he's working up his next plan. And bear in mind, I've been in the ethanol industry for 25 years. I think I'm pretty smart. I'm one of the better ones in that industry, but he's had 4,000 years of experience. If I had 4,000 years of experience in the ethanol industry, I would be really good. I wouldn't do the stupid things that I do occasionally because I would know it all. And so we have a formidable foe out there. And I respect the work that's being done at the Christian schools, Christian high schools, at places like Tabor College, to help ground you guys in a biblical worldview. Because without a biblical worldview, a lot of this stuff doesn't make much sense. So, okay. Now I spent 5 more minutes, I got 5 minutes left, so we can go to Q&A. Any questions anybody have for me? Any comments? You guys are about as talkative as the class I had at 11 and 2. I'm not that good, just so you know. So I do have some stuff here. If you want anything, I can give you some handouts. If you have any questions, I mean, you can go to Ron and he will get them to me. I will try and answer them if I can help out. I would say that I've enjoyed the time here I spent today, even though they kind of ambushed me with more than just what I thought I was here for. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Yes, sir.
What's up, David? What's an important skill all of us should learn or develop in order to be successful in business?
What is there to learn? Okay. Point number 1, and I handed out, I think I gave it to you also, somewhere in here. Yeah. I handed out some simple, you can ask for one if you, I've got plenty of them to hand out here. If you want to be an entrepreneur, keep God in the picture. He will give you excellent guidance. He may not give it to you directly. He may give it to you through somebody. But I believe that the success of ICM is directly proportional to maintaining a solid connection with the God of the Bible. I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly, that you probably can be successful in life without God. Probably won't work real well for a marriage. Probably won't work real well for your future. But having that personal relationship with God, I think, is fundamentally important. My brother, who I talked about a little bit, he was my younger brother. He died in 2018 at the age of 63. And he was the most fascinating individual for his extremes. He didn't always have the best language, but what he did have is a solid relationship with Jesus Christ. He was looking forward to dying. He did not want to take any treatments or anything like this because he was going to be able to go home. And of course he had pancreatic cancer, so it probably wouldn't have gone that well for him anyway. But he was ready to go home. And the lasting example I have of that is he's laying in his bed. Now I stopped to see him every night after work, and I'd spend a couple hours. He was in hospice at the time. And I would sit down with him, and it was generally silence. He didn't say much. So I came one night, and this was like on a Wednesday night, and he died on Saturday night. And I came in, sat down, and there were two people, husband and wife, from his church that stopped down and visited with him. And I came in, I said hi to him and stuff, and talked for a little bit. He said, well, your brother's here, we're gonna go. Do you mind if we pray? And Dennis, who's laying in bed, not saying anything, sat up in bed and said, I'll pray. And I'm going, wow, that's impressive. So he did, and his prayer was thankfulness to God for who God was, what he did for him and the opportunities that he had. Never once did he ask for anything in this, and this prayer went on for what seemed like 15 minutes. It was probably 2. And then he finished, and I thought, cool, he's gonna lay down, him and I are gonna be able to have a discussion. He laid back down in bed, the people got up and they left. He never said another word. Never said another word to me. But I needed that. I needed to hear that from him, that he knew where he was going, and I knew where he was going. So it was just a cool thing. And it's been what, 6 years, 8 years? I still have trouble telling that story. But that's what God will do if he's in charge of your life. Okay. Hey, it's 8 o'clock.